What is up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Over and Buried podcast, a wrestling podcast where you go over or you get buried. Wanted to bring you today, do something new here to the channel and talk about a top five. Give you a list of my takes, and I definitely want to have your input. Let's have a healthy debate here. As we know, Seth Rollins is the holder of the Money in the Bank briefcase, right? So this kind of got the wheels turning here. So I wanted to go on a brief history lesson here to start. So back in 2007, if you remember, Mr. Kennedy had won the Money in the Bank briefcase containing a contract granting the holder of that contract, obviously a guaranteed championship match at any time, any place, anywhere, for a total of a 1 year span. But unfortunately, due to injury, that Mr. Kennedy had sustained, he was forced to defend the briefcase in a match against Edge on May 7th, 2007, on an edition of Monday Night Raw. Successfully, Edge had defeated Mr. Kennedy and took possession of his once briefcase that he had won. Edge went on then to successfully cash in the briefcase against The Undertaker in order to win the World Heavyweight Championship. Similarly, then, back in 2020, Otis, who had won the briefcase, eventually lost that to The Miz. So those are two instances where that has happened before in the past. They're once off blue moon type of occurrences, but despite the opportunity for the Money in the Bank briefcase being kind of that life time that opportunity of a lifetime moment in order to catapult one's career in the WWE to the main event scene, win a world title. These are two examples where the Money in the Bank briefcase isn't always safe. So this got me thinking, what if Seth Rollins were to lose his Money in the Bank briefcase? So I've compiled a list of five WWE superstars who I feel at this point in time, could potentially dethrone Rollins as the Money in the Bank briefcase holder and steal his opportunity from becoming a world champion again and taking control over WWE. So first, I want to give an honorable mention here to one Austin Theory. Here's a guy who's been backstage arguing with his tag team partner, Grayson Waller, in those backstage vignettes. I believe he's newly onto the WWE Raw roster, having come over from SmackDown here over the last couple of months. He's had some previous history with Seth Rollins. Many of us originally had thought Austin Theory would be the one to join Seth's faction. He would take place of that Randy Orton type character, aligning himself with Seth in the faction, drawing parallel to an evolution where, Seth was the Triple H and Austin Theory being that Randy Orton, that younger guy, the up and comer, the guy who could be a potential world champion. So a lot of us thought that Austin Theory would be the guy to align himself with Seth. We can't forget, however, Austin Theory was at one point Money in the Bank, had won Money in the Bank. He had held the briefcase and he missed out on that opportunity. He went for the U.S. title in a poor decision from his character perspective, but also really from a creative standpoint that most of us thought, where the storyline just really didn't flow with the pedigree of the Money in the Bank briefcase holder. So he's not in a storyline with Seth Rollins right now. However, I do see this as a realm of possibility to possibly have an Austin Theory confront a Seth Rollins. This is obviously subject to change. Should there be, an appearance, some sort of on-screen storytelling being told here with Theory. But, he is a guy who had aligned himself with Seth during the COVID era. Seth was the Monday Night Messiah at that point in time, forming that faction that was really kind of thrown together with Theory, with Buddy Murphy, as well as AOP or Authors of Pain at that point in time. So this group was kind of short lived, in my opinion. And the group, didn't really ever catch on. But we do have that history there. So, there could be that possibility that maybe Austin Theory is the guy that could take the briefcase off of one Seth Rollins. So, honorable mention there to Austin Theory. Now let's get to number five. I have Big Bronson Reed. Let's not forget back in August of 2024, so not too long ago, actually. Bronson Reed was the one, who wanted to make a name for himself, and he ended up targeting Seth Rollins, not hitting him with not one, not two, but six tsunamis from, the top rope or top of the turnbuckle onto Rollins in an effort to really take him out, So when Reed aligned himself with Seth to join his faction, many of us kind of wondered why Bronson Reed? Maybe Seth wants to add, those pieces of the puzzle, those guys who could take him out, get them on his side for when he takes over WWE. Bronson Reed, in my eyes, is still seen as kind of that Secret Service, the security guard type of background player to Seth Rollins in the faction at this point in time. He's still, if you think about it, left back at square one where he was previously last year, not carving out his own path to the main event scene in WWE. So this would make sense considering that someone is going to turn on Seth Rollins eventually in this faction, right? So number five, have to give that one to one Big Bronson Reed. Number four, O Roman, Roman, wherefore art thou Roman? We haven't seen Roman Reigns on our screen since what? Raw after WrestleMania 41, where he was attacked by Seth and Braun Breaker just 48 hours after Paul Heyman, had betrayed his tribal chief. So this was when the faction had first started with Seth and Braun aligning together. If you recall, Roman came back out to the ring in the black and the white attire. There's no trace of the bloodline, so we need to reintroduce Roman back onto TV. At some point in time, we need to build him up as the face that he now is, and that WWE has been yearning for. In his first push as the big dog, that face character. I think we've now got lightning in a bottle with Roman Reigns. We can now push him as the face that we wanted him to be, many, many years ago. So Seth Rollins has been the one who's had Roman's number throughout his entire career. He's the constant thorn in his side. He's the kryptonite of one Roman Reigns. So, what better way to write back Roman Reigns onto TV than to exact his revenge on Paul Heyman for, his wise man turning his back on him and, low blowing him, betraying his tribal chief and taking the briefcase from his longtime rival, thwarting Seth Rollins' plan to control all of WWE, whether that's by force, by heist, or, as Seth previously stated. So there would be no sweeter revenge in my eyes that Roman can take that opportunity away from Seth Rollins. And let's not forget, if you recall, the main event of WrestleMania 31, the heist of the century that took place during Seth Rollins' first run as the Money in the Bank briefcase holder. Roman was the one who was on the short end of the stick there in that main event. So, this will tie that back, a decade ago. So that'll be my number four, Roman Reigns. Number three, I got to go with LA Knight. This guy, LA Knight, was my original pick for the winning the men's Money in the Bank ladder match here. He lost his LA Knight lost his United States Championship. He was kind of hanging out there in that upper mid card scene there for quite some time. There was really no path in sight for LA Knight. But that didn't happen. Obviously, he didn't win Money in the Bank. So here comes, King of the Ring on the horizon. So I thought, oh, this is LA Knight's opportunity here. Then that didn't happen. But then he got involved with Seth, with his faction mates in Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. So they got into each other's business there. He cost both Braun and Bronson Reed their respective chances at advancing through to the next round in the King of the Ring tournament. LA Knight was then instantly, really thrust into that main event scene just by starting the feud with Seth Rollins and this group, without him even having to wrestle any of them really yet. So WWE, in my opinion, isn't going to have LA Knight win something like a Royal Rumble at this point in time, I believe. But this could be his path up to the top of the card. He has challenged for a world title, challenging Roman Reigns in the past. But since then, he's been, again, at that upper mid card scene there. But the fans are really behind LA Knight. You can't deny that. So it would be exciting to shake things up here a little bit. So I have my number three here with LA Knight potentially taking the briefcase from Seth Rollins. Number two, have to go with Braun Breaker. Once Braun dropped the Intercontinental title, as we know, this guy was going to be the next big thing in WWE. Paul Heyman knew it when he went down to NXT, so it was only a matter of time before WWE straps the rocket onto him, and he goes for his first main roster world title win. He's an NXT championship holder in his own right. So, yeah, it's only a matter of time till Braun transcends up the card here. So, how do we do that exactly? I'm sure there's probably been discussions behind the scenes of WWE's creative of him becoming a number one contender at some point, winning the Royal Rumble, the Elimination Chamber, etc. So I'm sure those are conversations that are being had as we speak. But again, maybe Seth Rollins chose a Braun Breaker, a Bronson Reed, because these are two members of his faction that he knows in the back of his mind he can't beat them. So why not have them join him in the process in his quest to take over all of WWE? Get on their good sides in order to distract them from their main goals and achieving what they want in WWE. Braun has even spoken up recently, as we've seen on TV. He's interrupted Paul Heyman a couple of times. So I think a lot of us saw the writing on the wall here. I believe, Braun Breaker is going to be the one that eventually is fed up with Seth's antics, and eventually he's going to turn back face, going against this faction. And I've said it before, and I will say it again, and I'll probably continue to say this. Braun Breaker will be challenging for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 42. I am standing on that business. I strongly believe that that is going to be the direction that we are going there. Back at WrestleMania 41, my prediction was to have Braun Breaker versus Jacob Fatu, another guy that they could strap the rocket to. But that is my number two, Braun Breaker. Now, before we go to number one, I want to thank you for watching. And I want you guys to let me know what kind of videos or content you'd like to see. I would love to interact with all of you and provide my takes on all of things pro wrestling. I just want to, my mission is to continue to build and strengthen our wrestling community. So I want to get the feedback from you. So thank you again for watching. And finally, drum roll, please. Number one, as I'm sure you guessed it, CM Punk. This one is pretty obvious, right? There is no better feud than telling a story in the ring that mirrors the true disdain and hatred that two superstars have for one another behind the scenes. Whether it's work, shoot, no better way to blur the lines there and telling stories in WWE. Look at CM Punk's feud with Drew McIntyre, probably the best feud of this past year for what those two did, for what those two have done. And that's where you draw the money, right? And if you think about it, when CM Punk came back and cut that first promo, I believe, CM Punk, he said, I came back to WWE not to make friends, but to make money. So this is money match right here. The Seth Punk one-on-one match that's been brewing for several years now. Likely would have happened during WrestleMania 40 had it not been for CM Punk getting injured during the Royal Rumble that year. Um, if you look at it from, a bird's eye view, Punk and Seth have had almost identical carbon copy type careers. These are two guys from the Midwest that have carved their path in Ring of Honor. They become champions there, eventually become champions in WWE, where they make it to the big stage, they make it to the bright lights in WWE. These are two guys who, at their peak, have been the best in the business, but truly haven't been the guy in WWE. They haven't been given that title because we have guys like John Cena, Roman Reigns have taken up that space, and they have existed for the last 15 to 20 years. So those are two guys still that have parallel careers, have had accolades that really parallel and mirror one another. And Punk has unfinished business with Seth Rollins as well since WrestleMania 41. And just to throw in another name to the mix here, we have a Gunther, our new World Heavyweight Championship, also getting in the way of CM Punk. So could CM Punk maybe take the briefcase from Seth Rollins, eventually then cash in on a Gunther? That's a possibility. We need a strong, formidable face opponent for Gunther, right? So why not? At this point in time, we have a heel undisputed WWE champion. We have a heel World Heavyweight champion. We have a heel Money in the Bank briefcase holder. So this would make sense as well. Punk cashing in, or getting the briefcase, cashing in on Gunther. Or maybe Punk takes the briefcase. He eventually goes on to win the undisputed WWE title by stabbing Cody in the front, as he said. The two of them have had that backstage where the two of them had said, "Hey, listen, we keep running into each other, but we're on this collision course to eventually settle this in the ring. It's going to happen one way or another." So um, Punk was very honest, very blatantly honest, and he said, Cody, I'm going to stab you in the front, unlike everybody else that has stabbed you in the back. Those guys who have helped you throughout your descent up the card and winning your first WWE title. So maybe we do get Punk taking the briefcase from Seth, stabbing Cody in the front to eventually win the WWE title that Cody takes off of John Cena. We are now halfway into the retirement tour. We're now on the back half, which is really sad for us to know, especially those who grew up watching John Cena and admiring his craft in the ring. But yeah, we're now in the back half here. So we have to now figure out how are we going to get the title off of John Cena. So this is a realm of possibility. Or maybe, this leads to then a CM Punk versus Seth Rollins match at WrestleMania 42, possibly for that undisputed WWE championship. But, we shall see how things play out. But those are my top 5 superstars who I feel could be the one to take that money in the bank briefcase off of one Seth Rollins. So let me know what you guys think. Throw me a like, share, this, follow, subscribe. Let's get the debate going. I appreciate you guys always tuning in. And as always, thank you very much for the house.